Hi, everyone. Thanks for sticking around. We've got one great session left, which is a focus on social good. My name is Zachary Snyderman. I'm the social good assistant editor at Mashable, and it's a great pleasure to introduce Erin Sherinian, the executive director of communications and public affairs of the United Nations Foundation. Erin leads the foundation's public relation efforts, media relationships, strategic outreach, and online presence. Erin was named in 2010 as one of Washington, D.C.'s 40 under 40 leaders in international development. Erin speaks wonderful Spanish, Italian, Armenian, has passable French, and he blogs at Global Extrovert. Lastly, as if that was not enough, he is a certified Miss America judge. Really, right? That's for last. It is an honor to have Erin speak on the topic, crowd pushing, why nonprofits want your help, but not the watered-down version. After his talk, I'll have a couple quick questions for him, and then hopefully we can open up to the audience. So if you have any questions, please get those in mind, and there'll be mics on the side. So without further ado, let's welcome Erin to the stage.
Thank you, Zach. And you know, I know at this point in the program, you're not supposed to do this, but the reality check is we're at Disney, you're the digital leaders, everyone is good looking, everyone who put this together, I think we should actually be applauding them. So can we do a thank you to Mashable for this? And everybody, when I talked to my family last night and I explained to them, yeah, the reality check is that this is, we're lucky folks to be doing this today. Well, I'm really happy to be here. I've been inspired by everything that I've heard. I've heard so much going on in the social good space. There are experts in the room, and I've already been energized by a lot of the examples and a lot of the things that I've read about. More importantly, the things that I've heard about, because your passion comes through, and that's something that moves those of us in the foundation and the nonprofit world to do better, to do it in a more social way, and to do it in a way that's thinking about tomorrow. The organization that I represent, the United Nations Foundation, was founded by Ted Turner. Most of you know that Ted Turner is someone who's never been happy with just staying content with the way that things are going, always looking for the next solution and the next better way to be solving some of the world's global problems. So when he, over a decade ago, decided that the UN needed help, and the UN needed help in the form of resources and people and ideas, the foundation was started with what was at that point a historic gift of $1 billion to get people together and to do that in a way where we can match through campaigns and through people who know what they're doing, people like you, human beings with big problems. And we know that the group that has the task of doing that is the United Nations. So it's a privilege for me to be working with a group like that who's actively looking for your help. The secret agenda is that I need your help, and I represent a number of people who need your help today. So hopefully if we get through the conversation today, and I'm gonna acknowledge a couple of places where we're not doing what we need to do right, but where we need your help, hopefully we can connect, as Mashable Connect is all about, and make that possible. You're storytellers, so I'm gonna start with a story. You'll know exactly where the story is about 3 lines into it. Set the scene. Ladies and gentlemen, please ensure that your electronic objects have been powered down and are properly stowed. So where am I? Yes, it's an airline story. I'm recently in the shuttle from LaGuardia out to New York, and there's a guy who's on his phone yelling B693 into his phone a couple of minutes before takeoff, and the flight attendant, as they've now been told to do, is using the guilt trip to point you out and look at you in the eyes and figure out that you're the one that is the problem. She comes over to the man as he is trying to deal with what was clearly a limousine service. And the woman says to the man, "Sir, we have a problem." And the man says to the woman, "Lady, I've got a problem. I'm trying to get from LaGuardia to Manhattan. I'm trying to get to LaGuardia from Manhattan. Do you understand? LaGuardia to Manhattan." And this woman, bless her heart, says, "Sir, I'm trying to get you from Virginia to New York State." A lot of times we in the nonprofit sector are one of those characters. And I think to now what I'd like to talk with you about is oftentimes we're on our phones trying to figure out how to be social to get from one small place to another, when many of you in the room, the digital leaders, are trying to help us figure out an approach to get us from one state to another. Maybe we'll flip the roles later on and we'll go from who was the flight attendant and who was not. And I think I'm actually looking for, here's the clicker, this idea about crowd pushing, the idea that we all know how crowdsourcing works. We've got a task and we need your help. Well, in trying to invent a word today, Zach and I, we wanted to actually introduce the concept of a push. We can handle much of the task, but we really need from the digital leaders, from those of you who are in the room, a push, both in the concept and in some of the tactics, but mostly in how we can move our organizations to go farther with edgier, better tactics. The opportunity is that we want to make sure, utilizing your knowledge, utilizing what you're doing, that we can take whole organizations who admittedly have come late to the game in terms of social, in terms of anything related to a digital approach to their work. But we're making an open call. I am making an open call for people to help us not only make things crisper, but to make things more effective because they speak in a way that is more social. For the most part, the nonprofit world gets it, and this is where I'm happy to be a guinea pig, to talk to people about some of the organizations that I've seen where things are done well, where you have well-meaning, good organizations that are efficient, but who have come late to the game. Maybe around the boardroom table, there are people who say, we gotta get with the social media, figure out a way where we can work the Google. You all know that dynamic, where you're the person who's explaining to a really savvy, smart, and forward-leaning CEO, chair of the board, members of the board who want to figure it out, but who think that social is a tactic and not an approach, who don't understand that there's conversation involved. That's where we need the push from each of you. So I'd like to suggest that there are 4 things where we could use your help. We need your help. We need you to push us to help those of us who work in the nonprofit sector, the do-gooders, the people who are trying to make global change happen, who are advocating on behalf of health, women, safety, security, water, education around the world, that a social approach can actually begin at a local level. So many times, global issues are treated at a global, at an absolutely global approach, where we're talking about big world issues, and therefore everything that we're doing when it comes to social media or online engagement talks about a global issue. But it's hard to talk about women's education around the world and figure out how to talk about it as it connects to Cincinnati. Social media offers us a new opportunity. We in the sector are actively looking for ways, everything from geotagging to engaging with the meetups that we heard about yesterday, to actually identifying audiences in parts of the United States, in parts of the world, who can identify themselves as those who are actively engaged on a global issue and who identify themselves as part of South Florida or Central California. For us, the matching of what is local through harnessing social media and the big global issues is still something we need help with. We also need your help in finding out a better way to make a social approach to the complicated more crisp. I'll bring up an example in a few moments of where we got some help from those in the digital world. We're looking for help to make bring a more social approach to personalize the experience with global issues. It's hard to talk about your connection to a person who lives 8 time zones away. Even though you feel passionate about the subject, you care about girls, you care about making sure that babies aren't dying of polio or pneumonia or diarrhea, things that are achievable goals in the world that we can help change. But the idea of personalizing it through social media, saying not just I like this, or I'm connected to it, or I shared it, but why I shared it, we recognize that we don't know how to do that yet. And we need the help of the digital leaders to do that. And we also need to make sure that there is a smart way to engage with those of you who are leaders in this sector, to stand with brands in a smart way, to stand with you who are leaders in a smart way. No one is interested in greenwashing anything. No one is interested in just standing next to each other for a partnership that is maybe a one-off, that's a cheap partnership for, that lasts for a couple of hours. We want to find real, long-lasting ways to partner with you in the digital world so that we're making change all the way along the continuum. Let me show you an example of how an organization helped us in making sense of how people in a social context can engage with a very complicated issue. How many of you have ever heard of the Millennium Development Goals? Raise of hands. So some of you, and you're smart people, and you're engaged and you know what's going on. The Millennium Development Goals are the world's goals to solve some of the world's biggest problems. We partnered with Good, who many of you know, and we asked them to help us take a complicated set of issues and help make it crisper, help make it something that in a social context people would want to engage with and have a conversation and talk about. Good came to us and they said, after some focus grouping, an opportunity where we had to use some materials cross-platform, they found out that people actually didn't think that there was a lot of light at the end of the tunnel. That there were chances for corruption. There wasn't a lot of transparency. Where was the sunlight in the issues? Let me show you how a crowd push, when we put out the issue of a complicated issue of the Millennium Development Goals, how they brought some sunshine and therefore helped make more crisp the issue into the concept of the Millennium Development Goals. This 24 seconds was built knowing that we were going to try to build a social conversation. There was a social media plan in place. And believe me, when you deal with development experts, you always feel like you're the guy who accidentally got invited to the Mensa convention. These are smart people who know what they're doing, who are experts because what they're doing is some of the most important work in the world. But they're not people like you who are able to help us boil down into something that's not just shorter, that's a PR tactic, but that's going to be appropriate and helpful in a social media context. That's why I admire what Good does, and that's why Good helped us build what was up until what had been the largest conversation about the Millennium Development Goals, because they put sunshine into it. Did you see the sunshine? Interestingly enough, that's not about a tactic on how to better optimize click-through rates. They literally put sunshine into a message, thinking that it would build out what was going on. So those of you who saw the sun know what we were talking about. Let me tell you, there's the famous joke about a teen girl, a mosquito, and a stove who walk into a nonprofit. There are 3 examples of how crowd pushing has helped us move our work at the United Nations Foundation into a different space. We have not solved the issues. We really appreciate the help from the digital leaders. The Girl Up campaign is a great example. Many of you know that we have the largest youth population in history. 1.3 billion people are between the ages of 10 to 19. Half of them are girls. 88% of them live in developing countries and have real challenges related to poverty. They don't have access to education. They don't have access to health. 1 in 7 of those girls is married before she's 15. 1 in 7 of girls around the world in the developing world are married before 15. It's a problem. We knew it. We developed the first For Girls by Girls campaign that is helping to address this issue, but we needed help. We needed help to make it crisper. We needed help to boil down not just the message, but something that we would hope would be a conversation between teen girls and girls in the United States. After the introduction, let me tell you what girls told us. They told us that they needed something that would be a rally cry that was easily discussable, easily shareable, and something that they could talk about, not just between platforms, but between groups, and something that would actually be a movement builder. The Connecting the Dots platform got us to talking to the girls, but we needed the help of the digital world to help push us with some.
Imagine this, you're 12 again. But this time, you're one of the 600 million girls growing up in a developing country, and your story might be a lot different. Instead of school, you have to work. You're married at 13, get HIV by 18, and have 4 kids by age 20. Pretty harsh, huh? But you can change this story, because you can make a difference in the lives of girls around the world. Find out how at girlup.org.
So we get to this space, and we've got a movement. The movement is building. But because we went to some friends, and I'd like to make a shout out here to our friends at Purpose, who are excellent at these issues, our friends at Change, and the folks at CrowdRise, who helped us realize that unless we actually started a conversation, our movement was going to end. The conversation began, and girls told us they were mad about child marriage. They told us that that was a movement, that was something that they could get behind, and it only happened when we made the call for a crowd push. And they pushed us harder to go for what was probably the most delicate issue to start out with a campaign. But the push helped us recognize how you approach and embrace social and actually get us to the change. The same thing is happening for us with Nothing But Nets, where VH1 and MTV Networks has been extremely helpful in taking a do-gooder organization, a good thing, ending malaria by getting anti-malarial bed nets, long-lasting treated bed nets to Africa. Good cause. But VH1 and MTV Networks and a number of other partners really pushed us to boil down the message and to give us a conversation that we could take throughout platforms in a more social way, where people were explaining why they even cared about malaria and cared enough to do something, giving of their time or of their resources. We're now seeing, and here's where the I need your help comes up. We'd love to engage with all of you in the room on these issues. We know you're already doing a lot. We know that you're already engaged with a number of things in the social good world. But we have another problem that clearly no one's talking about, and that's the fact that for women around the world, one of the deadliest things to do is cook. We know how to take care of this. We know that through clean cooking solutions, we can avoid the deaths that are out there around the world. But we don't have a global conversation. We don't have the time to waste in figuring out a strategy that doesn't have a social approach in from the ground floor. The issues that the UN works on, the issues that the United Nations Foundation works on, are issues where we understand that for so many of you, social good is at the basement. Social good is at the beginning of what you do. It's foundational. we also believe and embrace the fact that social good is not the frosting, but the cake. So we welcome your help, and we ask for a push. We need you to push us farther so that in our boardrooms, in our discussions with donors, in our discussions with the big donors who will help us make the large budgetary questions, that we can make the change happen faster. So I'll end with the final story, since you're all storytellers and you love it. I'm with a couple of women who run a shelter in Liberia just a few weeks ago in a remote place where there probably will not be a Wi-Fi connection for a while. What is the metric there? What is the analytic when I tell them about the Girl Up campaign? I didn't talk to them about Girl Up. I didn't talk to them about click-throughs. I didn't talk to them about donations. I didn't talk to them about likes. But someone mentioned that there was this thing going on the Facebook. And when a girl said to me, and when I hear the words of Rosie say to me, "You mean 175,000 girls might be talking about me?" I knew that that was the metric that mattered. So to end things on a note where you know that's where the real impact happens, even though there are people who are not on that platform, that is helping make a difference in their lives. So thank you for the push. We need it, and together we can push these things.
Thanks so much, Aaron. That was terrific. Also, if you have any questions, please try and make your way down to the microphones. There's one over there, and there's one over there. I've got a couple quick questions, actually, if you don't mind. So,
how do we look? Do we look jaunty here, sitting in our? Good.
Yeah, we decided to do the conversation by the hearth.
Good enough.
So I wanted to ask, you mentioned that you need help with people in this room helping you push. What can they do, and what can people do in general beyond the ask, as opposed to just sort of asking their audience, you know, give us money, give us advocacy? Is there something else, or is that really where it stops?
We need help on a structural level because, admittedly, the nonprofit sector has come in late to the game. I think most people will admit that. We should have thought about this before, so we're adding it on. And people will even say, we're doing social media. Well, that's also fraught with a problem because that oftentimes means that it literally is an add-on. I would actually recommend that if you are going to partner with an NGO, I think that it would be really valuable to be sharing some org charts with them, to let them know that there are organizations out there in the world that have dedicated staff and resources to social media, not because that's what they do, but it's because what we all should be doing and can be doing. I think that doesn't happen that often. You have to be in a relationship of trust to do it, but if you're passionate about supporting an organization, either through water, education, or any of the things that you're doing, I would actually say to them, how is it that you structure your social media team? What does your online department look like? Now, it's probably half a human being, but that discussion could bring things to a greater degree than just actually amplifying the message through your listservs or through whatever you're doing in your messaging or your editorial calendar. That, for me, would be really helpful. The other thing is we're in a moment right now in the nonprofit world where we've got the boardroom's attention, and we can bad cop, good cop. You can say to us, this is what you've got to do, and you have a number of those of us who are in communications or who manage the public relations for some smaller NGOs or some larger organizations, you've got a lot of leverage right now. You'll say jump, and our boards will say how high, because they admittedly don't understand a lot of what's going on, but they know it's what we've got to do next. So I would actually push both for some of the tactics, but also for some of the resources that are needed for social media.
Right. Well, you also mentioned that you find yourself in a room with a bunch of people who are part of Mensa, and you sort of say, how do we connect those people, the sort of higher thought people, with the people that can actually make it happen? Is there a way to make social media not just sort of an add-on or sort of an addition to the PR arm, but to actually make it fundamental to either social good campaigns, online, even off?
I was energized about yesterday's discussion about authority. And I think, unfortunately, we have the tendency to script everybody. And that's not what social is about. But those of us who deal with these, again, subject matter experts who can talk for hours about pneumonia and the importance of what one vaccine can do to change everything in a demographic and everything in a society, those people are great, but they should be able to use social freely as well. So I think that as we as communicators embrace social, we should be true to our word about it. We should encourage, not just through official channels, but to have our experts out there to build that authority and that expertise. I completely subscribe to that theory. I also think on the flip side, however, that there needs to be a moment when someone can take all of that content and without anyone getting offended, use you as the bad guys again, the people who are able to do 140 character analysis of something to be able to say, that's great, but unless we can actually leverage, no one's going to ever hear the message. It's like those two things have to happen on parallel tracks.
So do you think then it's a sort of a sea change from the masses that, we, the people in this room, the sort of digital savvy people, does it come from them, or is it more sort of within the actual company where someone says, do you know what, it's time to start listening to these people? Or is it just sort of a perfect storm of both?
Both have to happen, and I know a number of colleagues are looking to you, and we're using you as the excuse, where we're saying the sea change has to happen because the folks sitting at Mashable and the people reading Mashable are realizing and helping us realize that we're not having the impact that we could. That we have decided that, oh yeah, we'll get there, but because we are the ones who've been in the business of helping and been in the business of social good for so many years, we know what we're doing. The reality is, I think this is you said perfect storm?
Yeah.
Or sea change? I can't believe we're in our nautical terms, but in both of those.
We're on a boat.
Great. On that boat, we're the ones who are saying, this is how we got to steer it, and this is exactly where we've got to go. So we are, if you'll let us, please, we need you to push us, but if you'll let us, we're going to blame it on you so that we can actually move farther when it comes to both the messaging and the tactics.
Well, I've got one more question, and then I want to open it up because it seems like we have some people ready. But my last question is about the crowd in general. It seems like a lot of people are putting crowd in front of other terms. Mm-hmm. Crowdsourcing and crowdsourced are huge trends now in the social good space. How important is it to reach out to the crowd on all levels, not just the people who, the Mensa people, the people who can actually make it happen, but also even the people at home who either are not the experts or
Sure.
are not driving this. But how do you get sort of everyone involved? Is that important?
You all get this, and you know that yesterday, for someone like me, the slide that was most impactful was the map from when we were learning more about Meetup, because the ability for us to take that map and not just say, this many people donated $10, and $10 equaled this amount of money, but this many people donated $10 and live in this many places, that is currency. It's currency for the girl Rosie in Liberia that I told you about. But it's currency on K Street in Washington. It's currency on Capitol Hill. It's currency with the White House. And I think that's where the crowd portion becomes really interesting, especially when it comes to actions related to petitions, advocacy, big A or small a. Those are the places where the crowd, whatever, we invented a word today with crowd pushing, but whatever you're doing, crowd in front of it is one of the ways that we move things. We move the needle in Washington and around in Tokyo, Paris, and the capitals where those big billion-dollar decisions are being made that will actually take the problem solving to scale.
Right, absolutely. Well, I'd like to open it up to the audience. If you have a question, if you could just step to the mic, please.
Sure. First off, I think achieving the Millennium Development Goals are probably one of the most important things that we as a species should really be able to do. That said, I feel like my company developed Product Red, working with Bobby Shriver and Bono to create a platform that could be able to partner with brands in order to develop and sell products to create money so that you could then solve the HIV/AIDS issue, hopefully. So I feel like a lot of the stuff you're doing here is very compelling and the stories are very important, but they also feel like they're just simply campaigns. And where's the platform? Where's that feed that will be able to bring a long-term engagement? You look at some of the stuff that the World Bank geography team is doing, they're now tracking every dollar that goes through from the point of donation through to the time it reaches the ground. They know from a GPS standpoint where it is. So that level of accountability, I think, is truly important. If we're going to socialize this, we're going to reach it out through Twitter, and you're going to donate money through a platform. Say you make the most amazing platform. I can give $1 through Twitter every second. How do I know that I've actually achieved something unless I get a photo back? So I guess my question is, what types of platforms are you thinking about in that sense, where it's not just a campaign that's a really amazing, very beautiful, very compelling video, but actually something that will give $1 to somebody who doesn't have it?
You raise an absolutely important point, and the conversation is going on right now about how, in the science of development, I'm going to use the word the science of how delivery happens, because you said a number of important things in your comment. That is happening right now, and I think through both Millennium Promise, through some of the Millennium Villages aspect, through a lot of what the bank is doing, through what USAID is doing, through some of its innovation projects, the fact that we can use new technologies in the new media space, in the social space, to track delivery of development, I mean, you're right on. So amen, you had me at hello. I completely agree with what you're saying. I think that the reason that we present campaigns in the limited time we have here is because we need the mass We need the fact that it's not passé and everyone has not thrown up their hands and given up hope. We need that story to go to the others who are going to fund those very expensive, meticulous, years-long projects that will make development assistance more effective. Modernizing foreign aid is going to happen when we do it through your platform. So the other story is the brand story. And I know what Simon's doing with WeFirst and a number of other things that are happening around here. That alignment of brands and social good is absolutely where we hope a well-built campaign will get brands more comfortable in making it happen.
If I could follow up, just to kind of berate the point, I guess. And one of the things that we've found is challenging the research, because we do a lot of NGO work, UNICEF, Macmillan Cancer Foundation. What we found is that people become overwhelmed by seeing a lot of proposition. Please donate, please contribute, please be involved. This is a new movement, new movement, new movement, new movement. It becomes overwhelming. So I push you.
Good, push.
To try and unify these campaigns between you and World Bank and the stuff that the State Department's doing with the hackathons they were working on in Haiti. Those types of projects are so powerful. I push you to unify those things.
And I think that Zach writes on this issue, and Mashable has written on this issue so that we can make sure that we avoid fatigue, but also make sure that we're making those things smart. So thanks. I'll take the push. We need it, absolutely.
Thanks. Also, I'll take a question from over here. I realize that we sort of look like two talking podiums to everyone on that side of the room, so I apologize. But if you have a question, just into the microphone, please.
Sure. Thanks, Aaron, for spending time on the topic. I'm Mike McCammon from water.org. We're engaging a lot of brands, and one of the things I've seen that's kind of a challenge, I'd be interested to get your feedback, and I think the room would find it interesting. What should brands do when they evaluate which partners they want to support? And we get lots of interest, but we find that there's a lot of naivety around making that decision as a brand to engage with a nonprofit. What would be those criteria?
I think you should be as serious with it. In the interest of time, I want to follow up with you offline, but I also want to make sure that I don't get the Mashable hook and that the love stay strong. I think you should be as serious with us as you are with any of your VC contacts, as with any of the other investors. That's what we owe you so that this thing is not a flash in the pan. That's where our partnerships teams should be as serious with what goes into our long-term commitment, whether it's leveraging your name, a celebrity, how we use each other's assets digitally. I think that's what you should do. But I think that we also now have in the development community a list of watch out fors where we know this is where in the relationship things can go soft.
We've seen very little due diligence, so that's actually a very good point.
And we have time for one last very quick question.
It's a quick one.
Perfect, go ahead.
Aaron, great presentation. This is Susan with Fenton Communications. Where do you see gamification playing in this kind of new realm?
So I've had people ask me that question in terms of do we do A or B, either or, and I hope this will be a satisfactory answer. The answer can't be which one. The gamification for me is yes. It's an area where we need the push because I don't think anyone has really nailed it. But it's an area where we don't feel that we have the luxury to say, should we do this or should we not, when we've said we've got to have a demographic that includes these characteristics. Well, we know what one of those demographics does, so why aren't we engaging there? So I think it's not just cool, it's smart, and I think you'll see a couple of organizations doing some exciting things over the year that we should all be taking note of.
Absolutely. Well, it seems impossible, but we've actually ended a little bit early. But I think Aaron, do you have anything, there's a final last thought you have?
Again, I think that the questions that people are raising, the things that I've heard during Mashable Connect over the last couple of days, prove the most important thing, and that's that the passion is there. But we can all be passionate about something in the room. No one is more passionate than me about making sure that we end child marriage. We need the passion to be smart so that we can then go to our leaders right now and say, this is what's going to move the budget line. This is where the resources will happen. So again, I throw that problem out there. Help us end child marriage today. Help us end the scourge of polluting and inefficient cook stoves. We know the answers are here in the room, so thank you.